Bonjour tout le monde, salut, c'est moi Charlotte et aujourd'hui nous allons regarder le verbe français commencer, comme ça, C-O-2-M-E-N-C-E-R, commencer. Et en anglais ça veut dire to start ou bien to begin, donc c'est un verbe. Et puis on va regarder trois citations qui utilisent ce verbe. Donc les voilà. Je sais, je suis en voiture et il y a des reflets euh, parce il y aura le couchement du soleil. Donc excuse-moi pour les reflets. Donc tout d'abord, numéro 1, citation numéro 1, chercher à comprendre, c'est commencer à désobéir. De Jean-Michel Huil. Je ne sais pas exactement comment ça se prononce, mais W-Y-L. Huil. Je ne sais pas. Huil. Dites-moi. Ok. Chercher à comprendre. Chercher à faire quelque chose en français, ça veut dire essayer de faire quelque chose. To seek, to do something. Chercher est plutôt comme to seek en anglais. Chercher, ça veut dire to look for. To look for. So if you're looking to understand, or if you're seeking to understand, it means to try to understand, okay? Chercher à comprendre. Donc ici, on a le verbe à l'infinitif, chercher. So here we have the infinitive verb, chercher, which means that if you looked up the verb to look for, in English we would say to look for something. In French you just on cherche quelque chose. So they don't use the preposition pour, which means for, normally. They don't use it with that verb. Here, in fact, we've got chercher. Chercher on its own would just be to look for. But chercher à faire quelque chose is to seek to do something. Okay, so that's got a different kind of meaning because it's followed by a and then another infinitive. So here we've got a sentence that starts with an infinitive verb followed by the preposition a, which has this little accent, and then we have another one, which is another verb, which is comprendre, which means to understand. So, chercher à comprendre, so seeking to understand. So that's the subject of the verb here. So looking to understand or seeking to understand, c'est commencer à désobéir. It is starting to, commencer à plus a verb, to start to do something. Désobéir. I like that verb, to disobey. So, starting to understand or looking to understand things is starting to. So in English we would probably use that kind of ing, starting as the subject. So the verb with the kind of the gerund, like present participle form with ing at the end, after the root of the verb. We can use that, like reading is nice. You take the verb to read, you add ing to the end, and suddenly it's like something that you do. But here it can function as like the subject of the verb. It is. So seeking to understand, it is starting to disobey. Seeking to understand is or means starting to disobey. I'm just trying to find a way in English that you can say it so that sort of render it in the same way. We've got c'est here, which explains what it is. From the verb être, so we've got the verb chercher, we've got the verb comprendre, looking or seeking to do something. Then we've got comprendre, which is to understand, and again with the re at the end because it's an re verb. Lots of French verbs have er at the end, like manger, danser, aller, whatever. Comprendre ends in re, so that's the second type. There's also ir. Oh, we've got the ir as well, désobéir. Voilà. On a tous les trois. So commencer is to start, so that's another verb. And then we also have désobéir. Désobéir. Very similar to the English. Disobey. Désobéir. So Jean-Michel Huil, who I feel like I have mentioned before in a can't remember which video it is. I don't think it's this quote. So he was the person who said or wrote this. So looking to understand something is starting to disobey. Now that's quite interesting, isn't it? Because you could say that when you start seeking answers, you might find answers, and they might not be what we are expected to conclude. So you really have to think for yourself. But there's a risk there that it might go against the grain. You might decide from looking further into something or just reflecting, possibly self-reflecting, you might decide that the action you want to take or the philosophy that or whatever you're observing or reflecting upon might bring you to conclusions which lead you to go against the grain or not to toe the line. So I think that's an interesting one. Citation 2. La plus dure quand il faut finir est de commencer. Le plus dur. So the hardest, la plus dure. So la chose la plus dure, the hardest thing, okay? So we haven't got chose here, but we're basically talking about the hardest thing to do. La plus, the most hard or difficult. Dur can mean something that's hard to touch, but it can also mean something that's difficult, hard to do. So that's the same in English, actually. Dur. So that's an adjective, dur. Quand il faut finir. So il faut means it is necessary to, or one has to do something. And it's in the third person. Il faut. Il faut is often, not always, sometimes it's followed by que. Il faut que, plus a subjunctive. It is necessary that such and such. It is necessary that you take your hat off, or whatever. But here it's followed by an infinitive verb, so it's quite useful. Il faut finir means when it is necessary to finish. So the hardest thing, in brackets, when it is necessary to finish, or when one has to finish something, presumably, or something, est de commencer. So the hardest thing is to start. So de is the preposition which means of sometimes, but often it functions in other ways. So it doesn't always directly translate as of, or sometimes it can translate into from, or from, de into from in English. La chose la plus dure est de, c'est de commencer. So the hardest thing when something has to finish, or it is necessary to finish, is to start. So if you know something has to come to an end, an action, a behavior, like a habit, or a situation, well, the hardest thing is often to start, i.e. to start to make a change, or to start whatever process needs to take place in order that something finishes. The thing that's necessary to finish has to finish, but you have to start something in order for it to finish. So I think that's quite interesting. La chose, la plus dure quand il faut finir est de commencer. So this is from Jean-Marie Laclavetine. Laclavetine. I think I've got that right. Okay, and this is my favorite, guys. This is my favorite. So, la nuit. So at night. La nuit. La nuit on its own just means the night. It's a feminine noun, hence it's got la in front of it instead of le, okay? And that is why, because it's feminine, when you say good night in French, instead of saying bon nuit, you say bonne nuit. So because it's It's got an extra N and an E after the bon. B-O-N-N-E. Bonne, bonne nuit. Good night is bonne nuit, bonne nuit, bonne nuit, bonne nuit. So it often sounds like two syllables, bonne, because it's a feminine adjective. It agrees with la nuit. Anyway, in this instance, it's saying at night time, in the night. La nuit, moi. Ça veut dire moi, I. Je ferme, I close. That's the verb fermer, but it's conjugated here to agree with je, right? Okay, so it's sort of, what's the word? Yeah, it's conjugated, which means the verb fermer, to close, loses its final R, and you add the ending after the root, which is ferme, you add an E to it. Je ferme les yeux. Moi, je ferme les yeux. En fait, moi, je trouve difficile de fermer les yeux la nuit. Parce que je suis en train de réfléchir, et de penser, et de travailler. Mais là, la nuit, je ferme les yeux. At night, I close my eyes. Je ferme les yeux. Les yeux. Les yeux. Et je laisse. Laisser is to allow or let something. Excuse me, it can also mean to leave. Oh, j'ai laissé mon portable en voiture. Oh, mais non. I've left my phone in the car, for example. J'ai laissé quelque chose à la maison. So it can mean to leave something somewhere. Not to leave a building, because that would be partir, but to leave something. Or it can be to let, which is nice, which can also mean, in English, it can also be translated as to allow or to permit something. So laisse commencer. Laisse commencer is, so when you got the verb laisser, conjugated, and then followed by an infinitive, it means to let something start. So the something is la vraie vie, which I think is lovely, because basically it means at night time I close my eyes and I allow real life to start. So c'est la rêverie, dream time, I guess, you know. So I thought that was rather beautiful. So we've got lots of verbs here, and the person who said that or wrote that is Etienne Guillory. Voilà, Etienne Guillory. I'm really sorry for my writing, but c'est ça. C'est comme ça. La nuit, je ferme les yeux et je laisse commencer la vraie vie. La vraie vie. Okay, so you notice here that we've got la vie, because if you know the saying, c'est la vie. Ah, c'est la vie. That's life. That's life. That's what all the people say. It's a feminine noun, la vie. La vie en rose is another famous song with la vie. So if you can remember those two, you'll remember that the word life is feminine, la vie. And vrai can also appear without an E on the end. Vrai ou faux, you might remember that from French lessons in school if you did French. True or false? Vrai ou faux? But here, because the adjective vrai agrees with vie, it has an extra E on the end. A little bit like French, I mentioned bonne nuit, which is quite pertinent because the sun's just going down. So, bonne nuit, la nuit, c'est la nuit et c'est la vie. So instead of bon, like in bonjour, which is hello or good day, if you like, good day. Bon is the masculine adjective good, and bonne is the feminine version of the adjective good. So bonne nuit has an extra N and an E to help it sound different. And similarly, the adjective vrai has its feminine ending E on there. And adjectives in French agree in gender and number. So you might see an extra S at the end of something, or you might see an X at the end of something sometimes, if it's a masculine adjective. So don't be surprised if you see that, but it can often change the pronunciation as well. Right, So, and for example, in adjectives where there's an extra E or a consonant, and an extra consonant and then an E, it will help you to pronounce that consonant in a sort of a hard way. You have to, ça sonne, you hear it sound, you know. Right, so let's just go through these one more time. Et puis je vais faire une autre vidéo. Chercher à comprendre, c'est commencer à désobéir. So seeking to understand is starting to disobey. La numéro 2, la plus dure, quand il faut finir et de commencer. So the most difficult thing when it's necessary to start is, when it's necessary to finish, finir is to finish, that's another IR verb. Et de commencer is to start. And then here, my favorite, la nuit, je ferme les yeux et je laisse commencer la vraie vie. Oh, ça, j'adore ça. Donc voilà, merci beaucoup. Et voilà le verbe commencer. To start or to begin. So I hope there's something positive starting in your lives. Lots of positive things qui commencent, which are starting dans ma vie, dans ma vraie vie. Donc ça va, c'est bien. Alors, merci bien et à la prochaine fois. Au revoir.